I never thought I would be telling this story after 32 years of marriage. I believe I know my wife inside and out. We met in college, married young and built what I thought was a solid happy life together. I run a chain of fitness centers, a career I have dedicated myself to for over 3 decades. My wife, on the other hand, works from home managing her interior design business or similar. I think the first sign that something was wrong was when she started planning a girls' trip to Miami. All the years we were together, she had never shown any interest in such trips, usually calling them frivolous. But here she was excitedly organizing a 5-day vacation with women I had never even heard of. Something was wrong. Call it intuition, or just ears that know someone. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Okay, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I can't ignore my intuition with my busy schedule. I don't have time to do my own research, so I hired a private investigator. It cost me $99,000, but what he found out was totally worth every penny. My wife not only had an affair, she had to deal with 3 men, each believing he was the one, and each was promised she would leave me after some financial issues were sorted out. The detective's report was horrifying. The first man was her yoga instructor, although she didn't attend any yoga classes. Instead, they met at his apartment 3 times a week. The second man was a client who was supposedly looking for interior design services, but their meeting had nothing to do with work. The third was a real estate agent she met at a networking event for a trip to Miami. Without a girlfriend, she had planned a romantic trip romance with real estate agent while telling yoga instructor she was attending a design conference in Chicago, and client she was visiting a sick relative. Private investigator recorded everything: video, photos, and timeline of Ed's life. 2 or 3. For over 2 weeks he followed her to 18 different meetings with these men while I worked late to plan for our future. She was meticulously managing her relationships. The betrayal was horrifying. I decided to take action. My first stop was my lawyer's office, where I presented the evidence. The lawyer was a seasoned professional with decades of experience, was shocked by the sheer complexity of her cheating. He said he had never seen someone methodically manage 3 relationships. So I filed for divorce immediately to make sure every detail of her infidelity was documented back in the papers. While she was in Miami, I began moving my essential belongings to a furnished apartment I had rented. I left everything else in the house untouched for once, so that everything would appear normal when she returned, except for the divorce papers waiting for her on the kitchen table. I made sure I wasn't there when she returned, arranged for a process server to deliver the papers if needed. The private investigator continued to send updates from Miami. She posted pictures on social media, pretending to be traveling with a girl, carefully avoiding any pictures that would reveal her true companion. She even sent me pictures of food from group dinners, supposedly to maintain the illusion, while I was busy securing our finances and preparing for the Fallout Season 2. Fallout. When she returned from Miami, she found the divorce papers waiting for her. The evidence was undeniable. The dates, times, locations, photos, receipts. Her 3-sided life had been presented in black and white. She called me repeatedly, leaving voice messages ranging from hysterical sobbing to angry threats. To the first text message claiming it was all a misunderstanding, then blaming me for working too much, and finally admitting everything, but accusing me of invading her privacy. What she didn't realize was that I had taken steps to protect myself. I had secured our finances, ensuring she couldn't access the assets I had spent decades building while she was busy with her double life. I was protecting my future. The consequences were swift and devastating. My lawyer sent copies of the divorce papers with her 3 lovers. The yoga instructor turned out to be married, and his wife also got a copy. The real estate agent's boss discovered he had been using a client's property for his tryst, resulting in his license being suspended. The client was a local business owner whose wife owned half the company. She was much less forgiving than me. The news spread quickly in our social circle. Friends piecing together the timeline realized how many events and gatherings she had missed while juggling her issues. Her interior design business relied heavily on referrals from our country club collapsed almost overnight. The yoga instructor's wife, who happened to be the membership director at the club, made sure everyone knew the truth. Her carefully constructed world came crashing down. The men she had met all abandoned her. When the truth came out, the yoga instructor moved back in with his parents. The real estate agent lost his career and eventually had to sell his car. Client had his company bought out by his wife, who also cut ties with my wife's design company. I moved away. I sold my stake in the fitness center, bought a house on the beach, and started traveling. Met new people who didn't know my history. Fresh, I kept the divorce papers as a reminder of what I went through, but I didn't let that experience define me. On the other hand, my ex-wife is struggling to rebuild her life. She moved to another city and took a job as a saleswoman at a furniture store, a complete change from the life she had. Sometimes I wonder if she ever reflects on the choices that led to her downfall. Her betrayal cost her everything: her marriage, her career, and her. Looking back, I don't regret hiring a private investigator or taking decisive action, though the betrayal was profound. But it taught me the importance of trusting my instincts and protecting what I had worked so hard to build. In the end, her web of lies was broken, and she had to face the consequences of her actions towards me. I found peace and a new start, a life without deception. When she returned from Miami, she walked into a house that looked exactly the same as when she left, except for one glaring difference sitting on the kitchen table were divorce papers accompanied by a detailed record of her double life. Every lie, every betrayal, every secret meeting was laid out in black and white. The evidence was denied: photo, text message, receipts, and a timeline that exposed her triple life. Her reaction was immediate and chaotic. In the first hour, she called me over 20 times, leaving voice messages that fluctuated wildly between hysterical sobbing and his furious threats, followed by text. At first she said it was all a misunderstanding. When that didn't work, she switched to blaming me, saying I worked too much, that I neglected her, that I brought her here. She finally admitted everything, but accused me of invading her privacy by hiring a private investigator. What she didn't know was that I had taken steps to protect myself. While she was in Miami, I was busy protecting our finances, making sure she couldn't touch the property I spent decades building. I knew her well enough to predict her moves, and I wasn't about to let her walk away with more than she deserved. The consequences of her actions were swift and devastating. My lawyer, armed with a detailed report from a private investigator, sent copies of the filed divorce papers to her 3 lovers. The yoga instructor turned out to be married, and his wife also received a copy. The real estate agent's employer found out that he had used the client's assets for his affair, and his license was suspended. The client was a local business owner who faced the wrath of his wife, who owned half of the company. She not only bought out his company but also cut all ties with my wife's interior design company. The news spread quickly in our social circle. Friends began to piece together the timeline, realizing how many events and get-togethers she had missed while juggling her affairs. Her carefully cultivated image of a devoted wife and successful businesswoman collapsed overnight. Her interior design company, which relied heavily on referrals from our country club, collapsed. A yoga instructor's wife, who happened to be the membership director at the club, made sure everyone knew the truth. Clients canceled their contracts, and her reputation was irreparably damaged. Her 3 lovers dumped her shortly after the yoga instructor moved back in with his parents. After his wife took everything in the divorce, a real estate agent, whose license was revoked, had to sell his car. Clients were left with nothing after his wife took over their company. My wife had been the orchestrator of this complex web of lies that was nothing but the consequences of her actions towards me. I moved on. I sold my shares in fitness centers for a substantial profit and bought a beach house that she had always wanted, but would never have. I started traveling, meeting new people, and building a life out of the shadow of her betrayal. It was refreshing to meet people who didn't know about my past, who didn't see me as the man whose wife of 32 years had been living a triple life. Sometimes I reflect on those 32 years and wonder if I missed the signs or simply chose to ignore them. The late-night client meetings, the sudden interest in yoga, the mysterious business networking events, it all seemed reasonable at the time. But looking back, it was a master class in deception. She spent months, even years, creating an elaborate double life. While I still had no idea, I trusted her completely. Friends often asked me if I regretted hiring a private investigator, or if I felt guilty about how completely her life had fallen apart. The answer was no. After discovering the extent of her revelations, I realized the real victim wasn't her but the trust and love I had for her for 32 years. She destroyed it all with not one affair, but 3. The divorce was quickly finalized due to overwhelming evidence. She walked away with much less than she expected. The judge was particularly interested in how she had used our joint account to fund her relationships. Every hotel receipt, every gift, every flight to Miami was paid for with our money. Her financial infidelity sealed her fate. In court, last I heard, she was living in a small apartment in another city, working as a sales clerk at a furniture store. She was once thriving. Her interior design business has gone along with her reputation and social status, while her 3 lovers have moved on, each facing their own consequences. The yoga instructor is teaching at a small studio 2 states away. The real estate agent is struggling to make ends meet as a car salesman. The client left the company his wife is now running successfully without him. Sometimes I look back at the divorce papers I keep in a drawer as a reminder of what I went through. They are proof that this story sounds as unbelievable as it does. It really happened. I never thought my wife could betray me like this after 32 years of marriage. But she did, and in the end she carefully built the house of lies, collapsed, leaving her to face the consequences alone. For me, I have found peace. I have built a new life free of deception and betrayal. And although I will never forget what happened, but I refuse to let it get to me. Life goes on, and so do I.